All right, what do we got?
Just came in. Heart attack. 5'9", 300 pounds, 32 years old.
How the hell does that happen?
Mexico ranks first in the world in childhood obesity and second in adult obesity. The latest records of the National Health and Nutrition Survey in 2016 revealed that 33.2% of children between 6 and 11 years old are overweight and obese. And in the case of adolescents 12 to 19 years old, 36.3% presents this disease. Therefore, this constitutes an important public health problem in our country. We are the #1 consumer country of soft drinks in the world. The chance that a child will be obese increases by 60% for each extra serving of soda consumed per day. Obesity has been described by epidemiologists as an epidemiological transition because we are going from having a problem of infectious diseases that are prevented with vaccines such as cholera, dengue, and hepatitis to chronic degenerative non-communicable diseases such as they are cardiovascular diseases, cancer, and diabetes, which are prevented by controlling the products that are sold healthily. Obesity is a multicausal disease. That is, there is no single explanation for why someone is obese. The obesity epidemic facing our country constitutes an important public health challenge where children play an important role, and therefore, we must address this problem from its origin, touching the social, educational, and governmental aspects. Historically in Mexico, the main health problem related to nutrition until the beginning and middle of the last century was malnutrition, since it is among the first 5 causes of infant mortality, and in addition, it is revealed that obesity in Mexico is on the rise, since more than half of its population is overweight and more than 15% are obese, this trend being greater among children. The current obesity epidemic was known until a decade ago. Its causes go back to the entrance of the food industry in the 1950s, and we can observe that obesity is a consequence of the growth of the processed food industry and also of the lack of government policies that promote rural production and nutritional education. Therefore, we must tackle the problem of obesity from an early age to achieve a country with a lower level of morbidity and mortality. In the last 30 years, overweight and obesity have become an epidemic that affects 1 out of 3 adolescents and children and 7 out of 10 adults in our country. Combating and preventing this phenomenon is an urgent challenge in public health because obesity negatively impacts the quality of life of those who suffer from it, and in addition represents a very significant burden for the health sector. Countless studies have proven its direct link with chronic diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, and other cardiovascular diseases, which today represent some of the main causes of morbidity and mortality in Mexicans. It is clear that our society must tackle this trend from all fronts. The task, however, is not easy. The extremely high incidence of obesity in Mexico reflects a complex and multifactorial reality. Our efforts must focus on fully understanding the particularities of its epidemiology to empower its control, treatment, and prevention. We must study the wide range of health and social determinants that cause the problem, and to achieve this, it will be necessary to make use of all the scientific and academic resources that we have. What are the laboratory tests to support the diagnosis of childhood obesity? Obesity can be caused by exogenous causes, mainly due to the poor nutritional practices, and endogenous by health problems related to disorders of the thyroid, pituitary, and adrenal glands. In the laboratory, tests are carried out that contribute to the assessment and diagnosis, such as the determination of basal glucose, the glucose tolerance curve, glycosylated hemoglobin, urea, creatinine, total cholesterol, high and low density cholesterol, lipids, and total triglycerides. In addition, tests such as thyroid profile, anti-thyroid antibodies, cortisol, antidiuretic hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone, among others, can also be performed. What if obesity is not addressed? Obesity is a chronic disease. It is one of the most important causes of diabetes, hypertension, and dyslipidemia, with all the consequences that these diseases can cause, such as vascular insufficiency, cardiovascular diseases, and kidney failure, among others. What are the requirements that an obese child must take into account for laboratory tests? To carry out the laboratory test, a fast of 8 to 12 hours is required and a blood sample is taken. Childhood obesity in Mexico is a public health emergency that requires immediate changes as it affects the growth and development of children. The most important thing in terms of health is to prevent and not attend, so we must demand a right to health. The United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, emphasizes that the lack of access to fresh and healthy food, the aggressive marketing of food products aimed at children, and the high exposure to ultra-processed foods in homes, schools, and markets lead to an unhealthy environment that promotes obesity and affects millions of Mexicans. To reduce the obesogenic environment, it is necessary that food products have a clear, direct, simple, visible front labeling and easy to understand for both children and adults. For this reason, Mexico adopted a new label that is placed in the front of the packaging, which has been endorsed by several governmental, academic, civil society, and international organizations, including UNICEF. This type of labeling alerts consumers to excess calories, sugar, sodium, saturated fat, and trans fat, as well as caffeine and artificial sweeteners, so children can avoid them, as well as limiting advertising with popular characters and cartoons on products intended for children. The director of the Center for Research in Health and Nutrition of the National Institute of Public Health, Simón Barquera, believes that the new labeling model will help in the problem, allowing a large part of the population, regardless of their socioeconomic and educational status, identify unhealthy products and can make better food choices. Mexico is one of the few countries in the world where nobody cares what they sell to children in the schools. The school is a space where students are captive. In other words, they are outside the supervision of the parents, and then that space becomes the responsibility of the state, which must guarantee that it is a healthy space. Instead, the state ignores this and has allowed it to become a space that generates an obesogenic environment. A fundamental part of public policy has been aimed at maintaining awareness messages in the population.
There's been a perpetuation of this perception that obesity is an individual's problem, and that in no way does the state share the responsibility. But we know today, and the evidence shows, that obesity is a public health problem.
As she says, the obligation to protect corresponds to the state. If a company is self-regulating, then that self-regulation is not a way to protect the right to health. The correct way would be the regulation by the state of that company. All the rest are policies of advertising. Around 4.5 million children in Mexico are obese or overweight. In schools, children often buy chips or candy and accompany it with a soft drink. And these are factors that have exclusively triggered the problem of childhood obesity. This showed us that the greatest growth in childhood obesity occurs in the school years. Let's look at these two ads about the harm that junk food causes to children.
Aggressive junk food marketing manipulates and induces our children to consume unhealthy food and drinks, creating poor eating habits from a young age. Consuming junk food causes obesity. 1 of every 3 Mexican children is overweight or obese. Obesity can cause heart disease, some kinds of cancer, diabetes, and even death. Enough. Our kids come first. Let's remove all junk food marketing from their world.
At least 10 other states across Mexico and the nation's capital are exploring legislation that would ban junk food sales to minors. The legislative efforts are nonpartisan and come from all major Mexican political parties. One state is even planning to ban advertising of such items.
The regulation of food in schools, which is only allowing healthy and fresh food, has greatly reduced overweight and obesity. The solution to the obesity problem must focus on two totally different points, which are the educational part, that is to say the preventive part, and the development of social programs aimed at helping families to exercise. How can parents help prevent childhood obesity? Let's hear this from a specialist.
Childhood obesity is a major problem in this country. As a family medicine physician, I recommend children have at least 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity on most, if not all, days of the week to help achieve and maintain a healthy weight. I also recommend limiting screen time, which includes video games and watching TV, to no more than 2 hours a day. Healthy eating is key to preventing obesity. Children should have at least 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. Sweetened beverages, large meal portions, and fast food consumption should be minimized, if not avoided completely. Also, don't skip breakfast. Healthy weight children are more likely to become healthy weight adults. Solid lifestyle choices at a young age can set the foundation for long-term wellness.
It is important to modify eating habits, encourage the practice of physical activity, and consult health professionals. Some food recommendations are increase the consumption of natural water and reduce sugary drinks, eat fresh fruits and vegetables, and reduce the daily consumption of foods high in fat and sugar. Due to all the complications caused by this epidemic of childhood obesity, we reiterate that the most important thing in terms of health is prevention and not attending, so we must demand our right to health. We are going to demand that the state properly regulate the markets of companies that are actively encouraging poor eating habits, mainly for children in schools. We are at a critical point in the history of Mexico, and we have to ask ourselves as a government, as a society, as parents, and as Mexicans, the country that we want for the next few years. One where its child population is sick and dying of preventable diseases, or one where the laws of regulations and public policies necessary in schools were created to fight obesity and overweight in children. We deserve this and more. We hope that, in this 6-year term, the government, the society, and the private sector will act decisively with the urgency and magnitude that this problem requires.